Hey guys, Youngblood with you, and today we're going to be wrapping up our Picking the Right Cargo Ship series, this time looking at all of the options 250 or above. Now, there's a ton of ships that are available in this price range with varying cargo and other abilities, so we're going to break them all down. However, this time we're not really going to be going in order of price because I feel there's a few that we can kind of lump together as well as some that we can just kind of cross off the list pretty quick. So if we're going to go ahead and jump right in, let's go ahead and start off with the mid to large size whole series ships. So if you're familiar with these, you kind of know what they're all about. But if you're unfamiliar, they're in a concept and development stage right now, and there's really 5 of them total, being lettered A, B, C, D, and E. Now, in this price range, we have the whole C starting at $250, the whole D at $350, and the whole E at $650. Now, if you're wondering why there's such a significant price difference between these ships, the answer is pretty easy. The cargo capacity is essentially growing exponentially. The whole C, which is said to be one of the most popular ships in the verse, is capable of carrying a staggering 4,608 SCU of cargo. That's 4,608 SCU of cargo. At $250, you're now getting about 18.43 SCU for each dollar invested. That's crazy, but it really just gets more nuts from there. The whole D has the ability to carry 20,736 SCU of cargo, being 59.25 SCU per dollar spent. And the whole E is just plain wacky at 98,304 SCU, which equals 151.24 SCU per dollar spent. That means that the whole D is carrying 4.5 times as much cargo as the C, and the E carries about 5 times what the D carries. So, you may be looking at these numbers and saying, these are easily the most bang for the buck on cargo, why not just grab one? And that's a fair point, but there is a lot more to be aware of with these ships. First off, they have an external scaffolding that's kind of made to hold cargo boxes on the exterior of the ship, meaning you're missing out on some of that interior space and the cargo's kind of at risk. Now, some people refer to the whole series as piñatas because the idea of knocking cargo off the ship is interesting. Now, with the current damage models, you'd almost envision them being treated like parts of the ship, but as that continues to develop, it's certainly a possibility that you lose cargo during an engagement. These are also essentially freight trains, both in role and capacity, and as such, they're going to be big, slow, and probably massive targets, not only because of their size, but also because of the potential payday. Another factor is that they're pretty poorly defended, with just a few turrets, and what is sure to be a pretty clunky flight model. So you're unlikely to run from or outmaneuver threats that are going to be engaging you. Additionally, these ships' carrying design means that they can't really land on surfaces when they're laden with cargo. Now, sure, you could collapse the middle section and land empty, but what's really the point of that? So that means that outpost trading is out of the question. Now, there's going to be concerns with the cargo capacity, meaning that you probably wouldn't be able to buy enough to fill up your ship at a small outpost anyways, but that's neither here or there. What it does mean, though, is that you're going to be restricted to stations like truck stops and cargo stations, which means that some of the scenery you get when landing was going to be a little bit foreign to you. Now, there is a lot going against these ships, but I will say this. They do offer the best bang for buck in cargo ability, and they have low crew costs. They're simple to operate. I think these ships are worthy choices for some, but you have factors to consider. If you're a lone wolf, I would say you may be okay with a whole C if you hire some protection and you work in monitored space. For the D&E though, I would suggest that you really only buy one of these if you are really kind of in a large organization that has a presence that can help to keep you safe. It's almost like an organizational operation to be able to operate this ship. Now, with cargo, you have to spend your own money at first to fill up the ship if you're doing commodity trading. And with a ship that carries basically 100,000 SCU, that's going to cost a fortune, which means you have a ton at risk. I also think that with a ship of this capacity, it's going to be hard for you to buy enough goods to fill for a long time. So my recommendation would likely be to skip out on one of these and get something smaller and then end up earning one of these in-game when you end up having enough money to actually fill it. So looking at some of the lower priced options on this list, you have 2 that come in right around the $300 mark, being the Caterpillar at $295 and the Starfarer at $300. The Caterpillar is one of the better value ships right now for cargo because it's the first ship aside from the whole C that really gets close to that 2 SCU per dollar spent mark at 1.95, kind of doubling your investment. Now the Starfarer comes in at 291 SCU, which is 0.97 SCU per dollar spent. And that's a really significant difference in what you get for what you spend. But it is worth noting that the current number for the Starfarer is limited to the internal storage hangar only. And you'll eventually be able to swap out the liquid storage containers in the rear for cargo boxes, which will increase your capacity significantly, maybe even to be able to match the Caterpillar. Now, that brings up a good point, too, that eventually you can transport fuel and other liquids in the Starfarer barrels, which may give you some diversity at some point in which you can haul. Now, I would talk about diversity in roles, with the Starfarer actually being able to be a fuel collector and refiller, but considering the Caterpillar is going to have all sorts of modules to customize the various segments, both are going to give you versatility outside of cargo, with the Cat really trumping the Starfarer there. As far as the flight model is concerned, neither one is really nice to fly, but there's very little that's going to be more bulky or sluggish than a Starfarer. It's really just not fun to fly, and the bridge is kind of just what it is. The Caterpillar maneuvers similarly and is a tad bit faster than the Starfarer. The Starfarer does have superior hull hit points, meaning it's a little bit more durable, but they both have really good shields for the most part. The Caterpillar takes the cake on the quantum speed because it actually has just a better component, but with it being component-based, the Starfarer can match it if you decide to spend a little bit and upgrade it. Now, one thing the Starfarer definitely has going in its favor is the weaponry, because it has a large turret on the top, 2 decent turrets in the rear, and 4 forward-facing weapons for the pilot. The damage output is just far superior to the Caterpillar at this point, and the turret placement, in my mind, is better, so you can defend your goods a little bit better. So between these two, I would definitely take the Cat, though the Starfarer is a worthy competitor to include in this discussion, especially when you factor some amount of combat involved in that. Now, one step beyond that, though, is the Starfarer Gemini, which is the military version of the refueling ship, upgraded by Aegis, and what you essentially see is a more hull armored and better components, including +1 size on every weapon on the ship, as well as bolting on some large missiles included on the nose of the ship. It does cost more at $340, which drops that ratio to 0.86 SCU per dollar spent compared to 0.97 on the base Starfarer. So while it may seem like a worse value, I would probably argue that if you're going to pick the Starfarer over the Cat for ability to defend your goods, then I would say the slightly lower value ratio for better armor and damage output makes the Starfarer G my preference between the two models. Regardless, I'm still going to take the higher cargo ability of the Caterpillar over both of the Starfarer models. Now, speaking of the Cat, there's another ship coming in at $360 that I personally upgraded my Caterpillar to, and that's the C2 Hercules. Now, this is a Crusader ship that is the Starlifter platform, which is really designed to be a cargo ship and a vehicle transport. The ship has good turret coverage, dedicated VTOL setup to get up and off the surfaces better, a more logical design, meaning that landing should be a little bit easier than the long Caterpillar design. It's got nice ramps to take advantage of loading up and offloading things like tanks and other vehicles, but that also applies to manual unloading and loading of cargo, and frankly, it seems like it's going to be a little bit faster and more agile than some of the others on this list. Now, at $360, it carries 624 SCU of cargo, putting the ratio at 1.73 SCU per dollar spent, which actually means the value is a hair below the Caterpillar, but in my mind, what you get in cargo ability and the versatility with vehicle movement and the weapon placement and likely flight model make it a really nice choice and one of my favorites so far. Now, of course, we're still in concept with this ship, so there's a bit of unknown associated with the purchase here, but the idea for this ship is well thought out. I will say that if you have big plans for modularity with the Caterpillar modules, the C2 is not going to compete with that at all. So this decision to choose this over the Caterpillar would really have to be focused purely on the cargo piece, which in this situation, in this video, it is. Now, there is another Hercules on this list that I want to call out, being the M2, or the military version of the Hercules. Now, it's quite a bit more expensive at $480, and it carries 468 SCU, which is significantly less than the C2, bringing the value proposition down with the ratio at 0.98 SCU per dollar spent. Now, what you get in exchange is really more in line with protection and aggression, with more weapons and better coolers to continue firing as you need. Now, the only reason I'm including the M2 in this list specifically based on some new additions to the game and seeing where the ground game is going. It's very prevalent that CIG is going to make ground a thing. So if you're talking about vehicle transport or doing trading in dangerous areas, new vehicles like the Ballista and the Nova Tank and the Cyclone AA and even Ursas and some of like the Cyclone TRs, they can present a threat to ships more than we've seen before. So knowing that a good amount of trading is done at ground locations, the M2 is going to be a very good option for hot drops and being able to deal with hostiles. I think the C2 can still manage some of that, and frankly the shielding is going to be enough to deal with a lot of threats, but the M2 is going to do it better. Overall, I don't really see the value in the M2 over the C2, but for that particular scenario, I think it's worth calling out and at least thinking about. Now, the next ship on the list is one of the more interesting on the list, and that's the very alien Banu Merchantman. This is easily one of the most exciting and most anticipated ships on the list, and for good reason. It carries a projected 3,584 SCU of cargo, which is a huge amount overall. And while it is still in concept, it's showing to be a very large ship, so it may very well be able to carry that much cargo. The price comes in at $350 right now, giving it a ratio of 10.24 SCU per dollar spent, which is incredible. There was actually a lot of people that bought this ship earlier in development for $250 before the price jump, which meant that ratio was actually at 14.33, which is obviously even better. Now, regardless, I'm expecting this ship to increase in price because it's big and it's got the alien techs and the cargo ability and a lot. Now, it comes with some very large guns on it, but there are two traits that it's supposed to have that make it really interesting. The first is that it's supposed to act as a flying bazaar, having the ability to open up and allow others to come on board and shop amongst your goods. And that's interesting because it takes cargo trading to a new level, giving people the ability to haul goods, but then to actually sell them at a location that could really be anywhere. Maybe you just set up a beacon in deep space and people can come to you and do your trading out there. So that's pretty interesting. Now, there's a lot of mechanics associated with that which are very TBD, such as cargo unloading and price negotiation, but it's a cool option to factor in. The other thing here that's interesting is that it's supposed to be a blockade runner. Now, I take that to mean fast for the size, heavy shielding, and heavy weaponry, but I think it's just interesting. To me, space is big, and I want to be able to avoid dealing with a blockade, and I should be able to do that without having a ship that has that capability. Basically, I'll jump to a different destination or change my vector, and with a few seconds of difference in travel, I can be hundreds of kilometers away from a threat. Now, if you do get interdicted and then you get quantum dampened by like a mantis, for example, then sure, it makes sense because now you can just blow on by. But that's going to be determined based on the speed and durability of the ship. So the Merchantman has a nice ramp in a nice cargo area, a very unique alien aesthetic. The cargo is contained internally, so while you don't quite carry what the whole sea does, it's not that far off, and the goods are internal and thus more protected and probably less likely to be able to be scanned. The problem with this ship for me is that it's very big. The crew right now is listed around 8, and that's really going to just depend on more development before we really see how many you end up needing. Overall, this is one of my favorite options on the list right now, but that crew requirement is something to keep an eye on. The last ship on this list is included because it has a ton of hype and people who love this ship, but it's not technically a cargo ship, and that's the Carrack. The Carrack comes in at $400 and is a military-grade exploration and pathfinder ship. And the reason that I'm including it on this list is that it's slated to carry up to 1,000 SCU of cargo, which with our ratio calculation puts it at 2.5 SCU per dollar spent. Now on the Carrack, the cargo is stored on the belly in 3 different modules. Now I'm a little bit skeptical of the cargo totals here, considering the shape and size, so I'm assuming this is going to have a little bit less than 1,000 when it ends up being released. But then again, it is a big ship, so who knows? The Carrack has a nice bridge, decent armaments, good defense. It's got what should be a pretty impressive range, being a Pathfinder. I would like to say that with a large military-grade quantum drive, you're probably going to have some of the better quantum speed, making your travel time less, but we need to see what components it actually gets. We know this can land on surfaces, so it should be able to trade at all locations. However, the size here is very large, meaning that it may not be able to be supported at locations like Alizar, and you may need to be treated like some of the larger ships where you have to use bases like Lorville or Area 18. Granted, at some point soon, we're going to have stations large enough to support that in space, but not really today. So I personally think that the Carrack is a good cargo ship regardless, but the real value with the Carrack is there if you're interested in the exploration side of things, but want to be able to do trade on the side without having to have 2 different ships. So looking at all of those, I think when I look at that, my overall recommendation here is this. I would say if you need a ship today and want to do cargo and this is your price range, then I would get the Caterpillar now, as it offers the most bang for your buck with ships that are available today. Once the C2 is out, I would prefer that over the Caterpillar. Now, if you want a pure value for your money and you're okay with the limitations I laid out for the whole series, then I think the Hull C is the most sensible and practical of the three that I mentioned here. And finally, my overall best in class here is going to be the Banu Merchantman for pure cargo ability, ground operations, armament, and just the overall cool factor. So that's basically it. We've wrapped up our cargo series. We'll be moving on to another career at some point here soon. But if you have suggestions or comments, please get them into the section below. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Have yourselves a wonderful day and take care.